If you've heard of NFTs, you have heard of the Bored Ape Yacht Club. Celebrity members, insane sale prices. So what does that all have to do with mechanical keyboards? Honestly, not much, except for two things. One, a Bored Ape member commissioned me to build him a luxury mechanical keyboard, and two, it's a bit of a clickbait title. I don't really know how to do YouTube. I'm messing around with things. Maybe you clicked on it because of that. If you're from the NFT world and you stumbled your way into a keyboard video and you're wondering what the hell is a luxury mechanical keyboard, stick around. Today you're gonna find out. In part one of this video series, I unboxed the components to this $550 mechanical keyboard, and today we are going to build it. And if you entered last week's giveaway to win the Durock V2 stabilizers, make sure to stick around to the end of the video where I will be announcing the winner. But now, without further delay, let's build. So the first thing we're gonna do for this keyboard is lube and film these switches. Now, if you don't know what a switch is, it's essentially the mechanism under each keycap that registers your keystroke and sends that to the computer. A lot of people like to lube and film these switches to just enhance the overall sound and feel of each individual switch, and therefore the entire keyboard as a whole. So we'll start by lubing the bottom housing here, and what we're doing is essentially just working the lube along both of the inner channels here. So there are two channels on the inside that the stem essentially sits in and moves up and down within. Next, we're gonna lube the bottom half of the spring. So just applying some lube and working that around the bottom half of the spring. And then we'll go ahead and sit that spring down into the bottom housing. Up next, same process, we're gonna lube the top half of the spring, and it's the same thing here. We're gonna just take some lube and apply it to the top half of the spring. Next, we're gonna lube the actual stem within the switch. And so just applying lube to the four ends of the stem and then working that all the way around. So we'll sit the stem back down into the lower housing. And then at this point, we're going to film the switch. And so what filming is, it's essentially applying a small piece of plastic in between the top and the bottom housing. And what this does is it's just going to make everything in that switch sit a little bit tighter together. Finally, we're going to clip the top housing back onto the bottom, and boom, you've just lubed your first switch. Now let's hear what the sound is between a stock and a lubed and filmed switch. Great, now you need to repeat that process anywhere from 60 to 90 times depending on the type of keyboard you're building and its layout. Yes, this is a very tedious part of building a keyboard, but it is oh so necessary to get the sound and feel that we're aiming for with a luxury mechanical keyboard like the D65. Next, we're going to lube and tune the stabilizer. So on this keyboard, we'll be using a set of Durock V2 stabilizers, which is what actually our winner today will be receiving in the giveaway. The process is somewhat similar to lubing a switch. So we're going to apply lube to the outside housing, the inner stem, and the actual wire that fits within that housing. Now, if you're unfamiliar with stabilizers, what they are and what they do within the keyboard, as the name implies, they are helping to stabilize some of your longer keys. So keys like your backspace, your shift, enter, and your space bar. If you were to press on one side of those without a stabilizer, it would be very wobbly. And so what a stabilizer does is it's basically sitting with a switch in the middle on each end of the longer keycap and allowing a smooth and even stroke as you press down on that key. Now, a poor quality stabilizer or a poorly lubed and poorly tuned stabilizer can really ruin the experience of a luxury mechanical keyboard like this. So it can feel loose and wobbly, it can give off a horrible rattle sound, or if you over lube it, it can make the key feel really mushy and sticky. Now that we're done lubing all the stabilizers, we are going to take them and attach them to the PCB. So the way these work is there are essentially two holes on each side, so they slot down and into a larger hole, and then they'll actually screw in place on the other side. Screw those in fairly tight. We don't want any wobbling or rattling of that housing on the PCB. Next, we're going to stick the gaskets onto our brass plate here. A gasket mount keyboard like the D65 here essentially creates a floating plate and PCB within the top and bottom of the keyboard case. Instead of a plate or the PCB screwing into or touching the case, which could create additional ping noise or rattle, this is further helping reduce any unwanted noise or friction within the case. To attach the plate and the PCB together on this keyboard setup, we are going to use something called standoffs. And so this is essentially a screw that attaches to the plate, and then the PCB will screw into that, thus creating a really locked together PCB and plate. Again, same theme, it's going to reduce any potential wiggle or rattle that can go on inside the keyboard. So there are 8 standoffs on the keyboard. They're fairly easy to attach. We can just screw them in by hand, and then we'll go around and tighten them up with a screwdriver after. And there you have it, the 8 standoffs on the plate. Now, before we attach the PCB to the plate using those standoffs, we're first going to lay down a layer of foam between the plate and the PCB. This has become very common in the keyboard component world. And again, general theme, it's just going to continue to dampen any rattle or ping noise and give the keyboard a better sound. So once that foam is in place, we'll lay the PCB down, lining it up with the standoffs, and then we'll screw the PCB into the plate, thus locking the two together and that foam component in the middle. Now, before we continue on with the build of this keyboard, we are going to want to test those stabilizers, and the reason we're going to test them now as opposed to at the end is if we do need to make any adjustments or add any more lube, it's a lot easier to get at the stabilizer components in the housing right now rather than having to take apart the entire keyboard at the end. So we'll pop in a few of the necessary switches here and the keycaps on top so that we can test the stabilizers. And what we're listening for is any sort of unwanted rattle or wobble that we can hear or feel while pressing down on that keycap. Now, you probably can't really hear it in this video audio, but I heard a slight rattle on the left side of the spacebar, and so I'm gonna go back and apply a little bit more lube to some of the components of the stabilizers. Once we're satisfied with our stabilizers, we're then going to put in place all of our switches. Now, given this is a hot swap PCB, there is no soldering required, which is great. However, the only thing I'll caution is when you are pushing down switches into a hot swap PCB, make sure to support the socket on the back side of the PCB. If you don't, there's a potential chance that you pop or break that socket off on the back side, and then you'll have to learn how to solder, or you'll have to buy a new PCB. Now that we're done with the plate and PCB, it's time to address and take apart the case. So first here, we're going to add the 4 rubber feet to the bottom of the case. And next, we're gonna just remove all 8 of the screws on the bottom here that are holding the top and the bottom case housing together. So this will release the top and the bottom from each other, which will allow us to then fit in the gasket mounted PCB and plate in between the two. You'll notice along the top of the case here that there are the slots built within for the gaskets to rest within, and so that's where that plate is going to rest when we piece the keyboard back together. We'll set the case down and we'll rest the PCB and plate in place here. And finally, what we're gonna do is lay down another piece of foam on the bottom of the PCB. And then we will fit the bottom of the case back in place here, thus sandwiching the PCB and plate in the middle of the keyboard. And then we'll go ahead and put all 8 of the screws back in place, securing the keyboard case back together. And there we have it, we've built the D65. All that's left to do now is put the keycaps on and hear how the board sounds. I really enjoyed building this keyboard, the KBDfans D65. It feels like it's really well made. I like the gasket style mount here for the PCB and the plate, and overall it's got a really nice heavy top quality feel. The Cherry Speed silver switches sound a little bit scratchy even after being lubed, so it wouldn't have been my top choice, but this is a commission board, so I built it how it was requested. Now let's listen to a quick sound test of how the completed board sounds, and then I will announce the giveaway winner on the other side. Thank you to everybody who tuned in and watched today. I hope you enjoyed building the D65 by KBDfans alongside with me. Appreciate all of my new subscribers who entered the giveaway. And if you happen to miss last week's giveaway, please be sure to subscribe down below so you catch the next one. And now the winner of the Durock V2 stabilizers is... We'll put the name in here because I don't know yet. I'm filming this before I've chosen the winner. Until next week, happy typing.